This is episode 119 of That Shakespeare Life. That Shakespeare Life is now available on our very own digital app. This app works on your tablet, phone, or TV and lets you explore the history of William Shakespeare with exclusive content, interviews, and documentaries not available anywhere else. You can cook, dance, and play your way through the life of William Shakespeare, all without any commercials. Find out more at cassidycash.com/experience and stay tuned after the episode for even more details.
Hi, I'm Scott Newstock, author of How to Think Like Shakespeare. Another great method for studying the life of William Shakespeare includes listening to this. It's That Shakespeare Life with my friend Cassidy Cash.
The Red Lion is very much a purpose built for this particular thing. It's built for playing, and that was it. But it's kind of transitional. So it's like we're in that bit before you have a group of players residing at a particular theatre. This is very much built as like a performance space for a travelling group of players.
Welcome to That Shakespeare Life with Cassidy Cash. Cassidy believes that if you desire to successfully learn or perform Shakespeare's plays, then understanding the real life and history of William Shakespeare himself is a must. That Shakespeare Life is the podcast that helps you go beyond the curtain of some of Shakespeare's most iconic works and explore the world of early modern England as Shakespeare would have lived it, learning from the writers, historians, and performers who know it best. And now, here's Cassidy.
Underneath a housing redevelopment in Whitechapel, England, archaeologists have unearthed what is believed to be the remains of the Red Lion Theatre. The Red Lion predates Shakespeare's Globe and is thought to be the earliest purpose-built theatre to have been built in the city since Roman times. Built by John Brayne in 1567, the Red Lion was a predecessor to Brayne's next construction, the theatre in Shoreditch, which was owned by James Burbage and completed almost a decade later. The Red Lion represents the start of a new movement in London, which would give foundation to the budding career of a young William Shakespeare, and that this was the first time in modern history anyone was trying to provide a permanent home for the popular Tudor playing companies, who up to this point were housed at various houses, inns, and other venues as a strictly traveling troupe. To create purpose-built theaters was a unique change in the early modern theater industry that invited patrons to come to the theater instead of the other way around. Other than brief mentions in two lawsuits from the time period, there's not been much information to inform our understanding of this groundbreaking theater until now. In January of 2019, a team of archaeologists with Archaeology South-East, part of University College London's Institute of Archaeology, began an excavation that revealed 144 timbers thought to make up the scaffolding of the Red Lion stage. The director of the project, Stephen White, is here today to tell us about the dig and what they found and what we know about the Red Lion based on their historic discovery. Stephen White is an archaeologist at Archaeology South-East, UCL Institute of Archaeology. He has worked in archaeology for 14 years, predominantly in London, spanning Roman London city sites, Henry VIII dockyards, hidden tombs of archbishops, and the occasional large multi-phase site in East London. In 2019, he was the lead archaeologist on the project at Whitechapel, England, which uncovered the site of the Red Lion Theatre. Hello, Steve. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how you doing?
Did you begin this project expecting to find the Red Lion Theatre?
Expecting is probably a strong term. I think ever hopeful, but I mean also equally we knew it was in the area potentially, but we weren't ever sure 100% we were going to find it. So the fact that we went through this 18-month long excavation and actually found it is very, very cool.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome. What evidence did you have that helped you pinpoint this location as the probable spot for the Red Lion?
Well, there's quite a lot of work that's been done trying to locate the Red Lion. The key documents, there's a couple of lawsuits from the 16th century, 1567, 1569. Just the owner and proprietor, John Brayne, sued the carpenters for what I think would best be described as shoddy workmanship. And in those legal documents, they had descriptions of the locations of the scaffolds within this complex of the Red Lion. It was referred to as a messuage or farmhouse in some of them. So had those. We had some land deeds as well that also referred to it. There was a couple of land deeds from 1688, I believe, and these two land deeds refer to the Red Lion on the periphery of the actual deeds locations as actual deeds of land. So we knew it was in the area, but as with all these things, it was trying to actually pinpoint it. Just that documentation was very, very hard.
Charles Sisson is one of the people that wrote about trying to find this. And he said that the Red Lion Inn was on the south side of Whitechapel High Street and suggested that it was part of a small theatrical district, actually, within Whitechapel Parish, based on its proximity to other known performance spaces, like the Boar's Head Inn, which was nearby. Steve, was Charles Sisson's identification of the Red Lion Inn proved correct by your find? Was he right about his description?
It was definitely south of Whitechapel High Street. Absolutely. About 120 metres south. So not too far at all. In fact, there's some discussion where it would have probably been viewable. You would have been able to see the Red Lion and the Playhouse from actually the High Street as you walk down that main, because the High Street is the main road from London to Colchester and has been since Roman times. So one of the main avenues into as you approach Aldgate on the east of the Old City.
Were you sure when you started digging that you would find it underneath this housing redevelopment? I mean, how does that conversation work when you tell a corporate project you think there might be a 16th century theater buried beneath their building site and you'd like to go look for it? What'd they say? I mean, were you nervous about potentially not finding it?
Well, so
fingers crossed.
Yeah. Big cross fingers, eyes, toes, everything. So in the UK, planning legislation requires you to do archaeological desk-based assessments and sort of analysis of if there's anything in the standing of where your development's going to be. And there's a few of these that go around all around London. This happens, and it's a nationwide thing in the UK. And in fact, I think in the States, you guys have something similar called cultural resource management.
We do,
CRM. Yeah. So it's the same thing basically, and going through that legal process, identify this as a possible location. And so I've actually been involved with this project since 2015. And when we were on site from 2018 to 2019, that wasn't our first rodeo, as it were. That was our third or fourth duration of time on site, because I've done multiple pre-works, including other trenching and stuff, to try and find what's going on. And some of those earlier phases gave us results in the 16th, 17th century range. And that's when people started getting a little more excited and pushing for more stuff. So, yeah, I mean, the developers are obviously very, very, very happy and very excited about all of the things that we found, as you can well imagine.
We're all very excited about the stuff that you potentially found. Records of the Court of King's Bench show that the Red Lion was an enclosed walled construction. Now, the BBC reported that the Red Lion dig uncovered 144 timbers back in January of 2019 that they wrote were part of the gallery seating for the Red Lion. Steve, I've read that the Globe Theatre was pioneering in having this gallery seating format, but it sounds like the Red Lion may have done it first.
Yes, I think that the BBC maybe got a couple of things that were mixed up there. So the actual surviving timbers we had was surviving the stage. So we actually had, as described, the legal documents, it describes the stage as being 40 foot north-south by 30 foot east-west. And you can imagine our surprise when we were digging on site and found this large rectangular dark shape that was 40 meters north-south by 30 meters, 40 foot north-south by 30 foot east-west. And we're kind of like, well, this could be interesting. So we found that, but it does have seating, because we also found large alignments of post holes that go all the way around this. The whole complex of the Red Lion is about 30 meters east-west by 15 meters north-south, staged at the eastern end. And actually it's rectangular, which is really interesting.
Which is distinct from, like, the Globe was built as a circle. So this theater was a rectangle.
Yeah, which actually is kind of in keeping with 16th century. There's the 16th century European theatre, actually. There's some other example, I think in Spain, there's examples of similar sized and shaped theatres. So it looks like it was, this rectangular shape, longer east-west and north-south. The western side of it, so the eastern side of it's the stage, and the western side, we've got a couple of lines of post holes, quite large, very, very big, like almost a metre wide. It's really big, really structural. And what it looks like is the gallery seating or standing area was on the western side, and north and south side are just walls. And then you've got this sort of 12-metre gap from the front of the stage to the start of the seating. So you can imagine this sort of big open space at the front, then like a tiered space at the back. It kind of reminds me of almost Victorian-style amphitheatres and stuff you see if you go to gigs and concerts and that sort of stuff. You'll have this like big thing at the back and then just open space at the front. And that's kind of what I think we're looking at here.
I've heard that description applied to things like great halls, where they would bring in temporary seating to try and mimic that. So that entire long shape where you have the performance happening on one end and the tiered seats on the other is very true to the period, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Despite not being the same shape as the Globe, was the Red Lion a prototype for theaters like the Theater and the Globe that came after it? I mean, we're saying that the Red Lion was sort of the first one, aren't we?
Well, I think some of this has to be how we define playhouses, how we define playing structures. Yeah, because there are examples of some places where they've built a stage, but there's no. It was built inside a pre-existing structure, and there wasn't any tiered seating or anything like that. The Red Lion is very much a purpose built for this particular thing. It's been built for playing, and that was it. But it's kind of transitional. So it's like we're in that bit before you have a group of players residing at a particular theatre. This is very much built as like a performance space for a travelling group of players. So while it is a prototype in terms of playing structure, it's kind of slightly different. But I think prototype is a very good way of putting it, actually.
It's different from the Globe in that it was kind of, the Red Lion was still in line with the older perspective on theater that playing groups were supposed to travel around, and the Red Lion was just giving them a place to travel to, as opposed to being a home base. Okay.
Yeah, it's like having like a concert hall for people who go put gigs on or something like that. It's just that sort of thing.
We hear a lot about James Burbage and his association with the theater in Shoreditch, but the discovery of the Red Lion is the first I've heard of John Brayne. Who was he, and why was he building theaters in London?
Well, it's very, 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 very cool because he is the brother-in-law of James Burbage.
Okay, so he's family.
Yeah, he's family, and he was his business partner in building the theatre, which is where it gets really... So this is why you can start looking at this as perhaps being like a prototype, really, because the same people are involved in terms of the financing. And the theatre, I believe, was built as a rectangular playing space as well. So you can... and it was much more... the theatre's much more ornate, masonry structures, much more permanence to it, whereas the Red Lion is kind of... I'm not going to call it a temporary structure, probably because it's made of timber and not masonry, and bricks are much more expensive at that period than timber was anyway. But yeah, so you've got these two people who are involved together, not maybe the theatre, but one of them's already had a first go. Now, you kind of got to make the assumption that the Red Lion must have done reasonably well if John Brayne went, yeah, you know what, I'll do this again and build it bigger and build it better.
Yeah.
It must have done all right for him.
Today, this spot is a housing redevelopment, but for the 16th century, this area was mostly farmland. Steve, does your archaeological evidence support the suggestion that the Red Lion was built as part of a house that would have been located on the farmland at this time?
So what our evidence is indicating at the moment is the Red Lion farm, or messuage, it's referred to in some of the legal documents. It's a farmhouse. It's standing on its own, and actually, the space where the theatre was having done the archaeological analysis. It was the northwesternmost field of this particular plot of land, and so they actually built it in a space that was completely open and had no previously standing structures on, about 30 meters southwest from the main farmhouse. But what's kind of cool is that as you proceed through time into the 1600s, the actual farm begins to become a much more formal inn, and we have like material culture. We have tankards and all these sorts of things that indicate it's gone from being like a farmhouse to actually being an inn. And we think the playhouse structure is involved with that because the evidence indicates that while historic documents say that the playhouse, the indication has always been, I was only there for a little bit, the archaeologists tell us that actually it was there for over 100 years. In one fashion or another.
So maybe it wasn't the premier playhouse or anything, but it was definitely in commercial business long after we assumed.
Yeah, and it looks like it might have been reused as a baiting arena or something, because we've got evidence of animal baiting with dogs, which is a very horrible thing, but is archaeologically very... As with all things in archaeology, the horrible stuff's really interesting, unfortunately.
I am interested in why the Red Lion is located so far outside of London proper, where things like the Theatre and the Globe were so close. I mean, they're right at the end of London Bridge there, and this one's kind of located further out. Why do you think the prototype was built so far away, and do you think the reason the subsequent ones were built closer in was kind of part of the learning curve there?
I mean, one of the things we can definitely say is that playing and players were kind of frowned upon by the authorities within the City of London. It's very much sort of a puritanical movement at the time. And they regarded these people as being ne'er-do-wells, if you will. So part of the reason why stuff isn't that close to centre anyway is that's one reason. There's been some speculation that during the 1560s was a very bad time for agriculture. Potentially, there's lots of failures of crops. We know historically there's lots of flooding as well. It's not impossible that they might well have gone out here because it was just cheap to get the land, because John Brayne doesn't own the land. He's not the owner of the Red Lion. He's presumably paying rent of some form because he builds this structure on someone else's property. So there must be some sort of relationship there. So I would assume that maybe the farmers haven't had a bad year and gone, this is a very good way for some income. But again, that is kind of speculation based on the evidence we have. I don't think it's a bad guess, but it is kind of still a guess at the moment.
Well, speaking of not owning the land, one of my favorite stories about Shakespeare's life and the establishment of the Globe was this story that the theater was dismantled and then reconstructed in order to create the Globe, with a famous story about Shakespeare, Burbage, and other of their compatriots supposedly moving the timbers across a frozen Thames River to escape the landowner. Does evidence about the history of the Red Lion indicate that this kerfuffle with the theater might actually have been a side effect of working specifically with John Brayne?
They had a very fractious relationship. I mean, as evidenced by they end up. I mean, when John Brayne dies, his widow sues them because they stop paying, basically for giving them the money. There's outstanding debts and there's money issues. And you know what they always say, never go into business with family and friends, right?
Yes, it's true. 500 years ago, even.
Yeah, definitely. There is a lot of friction there. How that plays out, it's hard to say. One if you look at some of the lawsuits that come later, there is this very much a feeling that John Brayne was potentially murdered by not so much Burbage, but Burbage's family. So there's a lot of ill feeling and a lot of scuffle. It is actually, I can't believe I'm going to say this, it's kind of Shakespearean, you know.
But yes, I think so too.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. I'm here all week. It's fine.
Well, what artifacts have you uncovered? You mentioned the tankards and the animal bones. What else have you found?
We have quite a lot of stuff. I mean, just in terms of some raw figures for you, we've got over almost 700 kilograms of pottery retained from site, which is all sorts of things, which is like tankards, vessels. We've got a couple of 100 kilograms, again, animal bone. Interestingly, some of it some of it is butchered remains. It looks like they might have been feeding the dogs with previously deceased horses, potentially, because we've got evidence of horse bone. There's just legs, not the rest of it, and they've been slightly defleshed, in some cases boiled, which is, again, horrible, but interesting. We have lots of really cool clay tobacco pipe, actually, including lots of ones that have got little carvings on the front. I've got identification marks with names. We have trade tokens, we have coins, we have dominoes, we've got gambling pieces, all this sort of stuff. So
very, very theater, playhouse type fare. Yes.
We're using the qualification of very leisure based. Yeah, we've got actually. It's really interesting because one of the London's got a sort of research framework agenda for all sorts of different periods of archaeology, and one of the key things is leisure and looking at leisure wares. So actually, we're kind of right in the middle of this really cool way of research, which I'm quite excited about as we go forward.
So what's going to happen with these things now that you've found them? Where are they going to be on display in the near future, where we can come and see them, or what happens to them now that you found them?
We have a publication process we have to go through. So we're basically, there's going to be a couple of articles and a book or two come out of this from the research that we're currently doing. And then generally what happens is the stuff that we find is technically the property of the developer, but they normally very, very kindly donate it to the museum, which will be the Museum of London. So at some point, some of these things will be on display. What we'd like to do actually is there's a couple of local schools and some local libraries. What we'd like to do is some pop exhibitions where we can come along and actually not just look at, but we'll bring some of the stuff that's a bit more rough and tumble, and they can actually have a play with it and have a pick up and all this sort of thing. And we really want to get people to engaging with the past and history and all these sorts of things.
Oh,
that's kind of the goal.
Would be fabulous. I hope all of that comes to bear there, that comes to life. That's fascinating. Where can we learn more about the Red Lion? What are some of your favorite books or resources you can recommend we use to learn more?
Well, I've got about 3 different books that I kind of swear by. The first is it's just a very light introduction to like the Shakespearean period in London, and that's by Catherine Ireland. It's her Globe: Life in Shakespeare's London. And then for a bit more sort of technical archaeological stuff, my friend Julian Boucher, his book Shakespeare's London Theatreland, that's really, really cool. And also William Ingram, he did this book in 1992 called The Business of Playing, which again is a great resource if you're looking at not just theatre, but how it operated as like a business, how it's all played across all the economics of that period. It's really cool.
Now, we ask everyone this next question here at That Shakespeare Life, and that's, what's the one book you would take with you on a deserted island? My friends in England tell me I'm supposed to allow you the complete works of Shakespeare and a copy of the Bible, so your choice would be in addition to those.
I don't know. If I can take my guitar as well, it'd be like 1,000 songs to learn or something. I think that'd be the
It's your desert island. I think the guitar is fine, yeah.
Sweet.
Well, what's next for you? What are you working on now that you're excited about?
Oh God, I don't know if there is anything else after this. It's kind of been quite all-consuming.
We've reached the mountaintop, have we? Yes.
Yeah, well, I've been doing pretty much nothing but this project since January of 2018.
So your next project is to breathe and remember.
Breathe and maybe
and
sleep.
Eat some food.
Sleep would be good. Yeah, maybe have a beer as well.
Well, I raise a glass to you for sure. This is fascinating stuff. I appreciate you being here and sharing with us about the discovery of the Red Lion Theater, and I can't wait to see some of these artifacts in person. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Find links to the resources Steve recommends in today's episode, as well as links to where you can check out the blog for Archaeology South-East, the organization behind the dig for the Red Lion Theater. Find pictures of artifacts like some of the tankards and bones Stephen mentions in today's episode, all at the show notes for today, which you can find at CassidyCash.com/episode 119. That's CassidyCash.com/EP119. How would you like to see the video of this week's interview? You can watch this interview as well as other exclusive interviews not available anywhere else right inside That Shakespeare Life app. That's right! That Shakespeare Life is now streaming on our very own digital app. We are very excited to make this available, and not only can you stream podcast episodes anywhere you go, but the app contains exclusive content like activities, games, documentary shorts, expert interviews, and animated plays, all free from ads and available anywhere you might be. You can learn Shakespeare's history from the experts who know him best while you're in the carpool line, cooking dinner, or even while you're working out. Take Shakespeare history with you wherever you go, all without any commercials. Download the app now at CassidyCash.com/experience. That's CassidyCash.com/experience. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening. I'm Cassidy Cash, and I hope you learned something new about the Bard. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to That Shakespeare Life. As always, the best conversations happen after the episode over at CassidyCash.com. Become a part of a vibrant Shakespeare conversation by adding your voice over at the website. Until next time, remember, when you want to know William Shakespeare, you have to go behind the curtain and into That Shakespeare Life.